Hey, hello to everyone, and I'm wondering who might have their almanac, their Still and Living Center almanac ready so they could read the back cover for us. It's like Robert Moore does.
Somewhere in here on the back. Oh, you want me to read the Growing Luminous?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. On the mystic path, we create our own light. And at first, we struggle blind and baffled, seeing nothing, hearing nothing, unable to think, unable to imagine. We seem deserted by dream, vision, or inspiration, and our meditation barren altogether. But let us persist through weeks or months, and sooner or later that stupor disappears. Our faculties readjust themselves and do the work we will them to do. Never did they do their work so well. The dark caverns of the brain begin to grow luminous. We are creating our own light. George William Russell.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone to Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, a conversation circle sponsored here every Saturday by Still and Moving Center. And this is the week in which we are taking up the topic of noetic discipline. And this word noetic comes from noesis, and it does have very much to do with light and luminescence, the light of the mind. Noetic, something that is noetic strikes us immediately, or when it's noetic to us, with that, "Ah, I get it, that lighting up of recognition." Our speaker for today is someone who has taught at Still and Moving Center for quite a while, teaching Tai Chi, and many of the GEMS presentations that he's given have been from the Tai Chi perspective or from the Taoist tradition, for example. Maybe one or two other philosophical traditions, such as Confucianism, I don't quite recall. But we are taking him into his profession and also I think his really deep um, way of caring for the world in the fact that he's a doctor, he's a medical doctor, he's a surgeon, and so this is Dr. Randy Wong, and we're so pleased to have you, Randy, to speak with us on this idea of noetic discipline.
Thank you, Renee. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. Um, the announcement that went out, we posted a few quotes from Dr. William Osler, who is considered the father of modern medicine in America. He started the Johns Hopkins Medical School and has been quoted many times to really inspire medical students in their training on tenets to guide them in terms of what to look for, um, and sort of guide their course in their learning. Now, as Renee had mentioned, that word noetic to me represents a knowing. This is beyond, I think, wisdom. It's beyond collection of intellectual um, ideas and so forth. It's actually a knowing. It is the aha that, or the eureka that you finally grasp, I think, a sense of understanding when trying to master any topic. So, when Renee challenged me with this concept of noetic discipline, I naturally turned to my experience in medical training. And so I'm going to go through a little bit of that process before we open it up for individual comments. When I was a medical student, this was from 1975 to 1979, I was at the John Burns School of Medicine, University of Hawaii, and their curriculum was made up of answers to previous national board examinations. So they would actually use the questions on the national board exams and looked at, what it is the board was trying to elicit from their examinees. And so they actually created a curriculum around those topics. So for the first couple of years, we were it was sort of drummed into us, these concepts, these ideas, all these topics in didactic education in terms of the lectures, the labs, and in the third and fourth years, then they send the medical students off to the hospitals for clinical rotations and getting the experience with patients, following and sort of tailing other attending physicians so we could add to this knowledge that we were accumulating. And as you may know, a lot of that was cramming for a couple nights before the exam, going through the medical textbooks and so forth, trying to memorize all of these concepts so that we could regurgitate it on the exam. Of course, with that style, we knew it for the exam, and a few days later, it was like leaving our memories. It was getting drifting out of our heads. But after the MD is conferred upon the medical students, then they go into a year of internship and several years of residency. And there you actually have responsibility to take care of patients, actual patients. And so what was interesting was all of these things that we crammed into our brains for the exams and then subsequently forgot, we would actually encounter these situations again and again and again. So every time you'd encounter a patient, you would either remember like, oh yeah, I remember that from, biochemistry. And, or if I didn't remember, I'd have to go back and review the notes. But in that way, we were reinforcing these ideas, these concepts, the biochemical formulas, and eventually it stuck in our memories. And what actually was even better was when, as we advanced in the residency, we had the responsibility of training interns and medical students under us. So the best way that I've found is when you start teaching, you actually have to really create the structure in your brain to have the knowledge clarified to the point where you can master these thoughts because you have to teach it and because it has to be transferred to the younger generations coming up below you. Now, interesting thing was sometime after I got my MD, I was already in my residency. The University of Hawaii decided to adopt a Harvard problem-oriented method, which instead of giving, didactics to drill into the medical student's brain all of these things from the national board exams, they said, okay, we're going to use a Socratic method. So we're going to actually present questions and clinical situations to the students and let them off to research their own solutions for a recommendation for these patients. And so they would present, okay, we have a 35-year-old female who is having issues with swelling of her legs and ankles and has started to have unhealing or poorly healing ulcers on the bottom of her feet and so forth and so forth. And so they would create a clinical picture. And the students had to go scramble through the textbooks at the time. This was, I think, before the internet really took off. And they would actually have to, go to the libraries and research, what does this clinical picture mean? And as they researched it, they would say, she's got a diabetic condition with possible congestive heart failure and so forth. And then they would come back to class and they'd report what they found. So it actually created not a rote memorization to develop this knowledge, but they were training them for critical thinking, how to problem solve, these common things in medicine. Well, the sad part was the first several years after the University of Hawaii adopted this, their graduating medical students were failing the national board exams and they had really poor scores. Then they realized, okay, you know what? We need a balance of both. So that's, I think, the key when, of course, out of my Tai Chi experience, you need balance. The balance is important. You can't just, drill information into the medical student head and expect them to remember it. They're not going to remember it because they're just cramming it for the exam. And if you give them, well, let's put it this way, we would call it spoon feeding. If you're just kind of like shoveling all this data and information into their brains, if they're not really utilizing it for any current purpose, they'll forget it. And the Harvard problem-oriented method, the Socratic method, was really, I think, a good way to challenge the use of this information that they're learning. So having both in place really makes sense. Let me just open it up. Get some comments from everybody. If you're, what do you think of this process? And I'm looking at it as a process, really, in terms of the development of mastery or the development of a master or a doctor. It's not perfect. Let me just, I'll be upfront and it's not perfect. And there is always room for improvement. We're always looking to find a better way. But current state of medical education, again, has some flaws. And let me just open up. Anybody have any questions, comments before we proceed? We've got actually a lot of things we could talk about today, and I'm before I actually open Pandora's box, I want to just get anybody's comments on sort of the current state of how medical students are trained, and this process. Obviously, we're all looking for this noetic process of mastery. The discipline in medical school sometimes has been criticized as being overly one-sided in terms of drilling in this knowledge process. But of course, knowledge by itself is not. It has to be applied with not just wisdom, but a mastery of the information so that you can be effective in taking care of people. Okay, let's see, Roger.
I had an experience, and I don't want you to hate me, but I'm a lawyer.
No, I don't hate.
Oh, good.
We don't hate
Good.
attorneys. Yeah.
Oh, good.
You're important.
So I used to tell the lawyers that were thinking about getting a master's degree in tax law. So I was a tax lawyer here. And I told them all that rather than get a master's in tax law, you'd be much better off getting a job as a tax lawyer, because learning it from experience, you remember it. Learning it from experience, you have knowledge that is very useful, whereas learning it in a classroom, like you were saying, is just in one ear and out the other. So I don't know what you do about exams, but I thought it was interesting. That's kind of an analogy to the legal field.
I saw that Antonio also had his hand up, so let's get another perspective, maybe a few more. I know that Robert Moore is a trained RN. Antonio? Maybe.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm an acupuncturist. Sorry, I'm not don't have my video on, but I'm on the road and I'm not appropriately dressed for a meeting. So I'm an acupuncturist, and you know, medical background is similar, not same as medical doctor, but as you were describing the training, that's actually exactly how we were trained. The first 2 to 3 years was basically just hardcore memorize, memorize, memorize. And it was very difficult. That was actually, like, I'm not a good memorizer. So it was very difficult for me. And I had to work extra hard to create those associations, like you were saying, to like real life situations in order for me to retain the information, because I felt like I wasn't able to even retain it long enough to memorize it for the test. And I didn't want to just check a box saying that, oh, I passed the test. I actually wanted to retain that information so I could utilize it, you know, practically.
Mm-hmm. So you made that self-discovery along the way. Interesting. Robert Moore, do you want to weigh in here on your experience?
Well, I think that Dr. Wong would agree that medicine is an art. You know, we talk about it as a science, but its application is an art. I mean, I spent my entire career in the hospital, and the doctors that I worked with, that's where I saw that, you know, there's some people that, you know, that really get it, and they can apply that knowledge and in ways that sometimes maybe you've had the same experience where it's not what's quite obvious, but you got a hint that it's something else, and that turns out to be the critical factor in terms of treatment. So I just wondered whether you had something to say about that. That's what I saw, is that the practice of medicine was an art, and of course, you know, experience is part of developing an art.
I think I'd like to add in the quote for the week, which Randy was really pretty much pointing to. The quote for our week in the almanac is Noetic discipline. Only one who devotes his whole strength and soul can be a true master. For this reason, mastery demands all of a person. And that's from Albert Einstein. And from what I'm listening to all of you saying is that there's something about just exercising the cerebrating mind is inadequate in order to become a true master, and that it requires other aspects of the human being. When you're just trying to cram in information and you're not having that interactive play with that information, and having something actually to care about, I would think, especially in the field of medicine. Patients, that's why you went into the field to begin with, is you want to help people to be healthier, to feel better. And when you're just doing the force feeding of information into the brain, that's not even satisfying to the heart, to the soul. And besides the fact that there are whole other aspects of the mind that aren't being properly exercised, um, by being able to do what Antonio was saying, to see how right from the get-go he could make some sort of practical application in order for it to even stick as a memorized fact. So something about this, you know, this mastery requiring the whole of a human being that Einstein refers to seems to be what you're all getting at. Am I on track at all here?
Yeah, right on target, Renee. The the cliche is you lose the forest by focusing on individual trees. And when we're working on the various subjects, trying to study and cram for exams, we're working with small parts of the forest, but we lose the entirety of the land, the mountain, the forest, and the animals within it. So what I found was when I came for my board exams, um, I actually had to see almost everything in that field. So I had the confidence to understand, okay, I understand everything within the field, the basics and the expanding envelopes at the front edge of the research. And then when I went in to take my exams, it was not difficult. Let's put it that way. Part of the board exams that to become board certified, yeah, there's two parts. There's a written multiple choice exam, and then there is an oral exam. And when I went in for the oral exam, that was really interesting because I had already been teaching residents, medical students, and so when I interfaced with the examiners, I was actually trying to teach them something, not uh, being cowering under like, please pass me, please pass me. I was actually trying to give them some information, and I got through no problem. But it was actually that ability to see the boundaries of the science and the knowledge at that time. And fast forward a few years into my practice, it was I think around 1995. I had a patient with chronic dystrophic pain or reflex sympathetic dystrophy, complex pain syndrome. And I worked them up. I basically did all the imaging studies and so forth. And I told him, I says, I'm sorry, I don't have anything that I can operate on. And he asked me, well, what do you think of acupuncture? And I really had no um, sense either way. I says, "Oh, go ahead and give it a try." He came back to me 3 weeks later. He says, "Doctor, the pain's gone." I said, "Okay." So it was really eye-opening for me that, even with all the medical information and the way I was trained, scientific method and everything, we didn't have everything. We don't know everything. So there was a big chunk of my knowledge that was like still available to me. I said, okay, let's uh, let's actually start integrating the practice with sort of Eastern philosophy and so forth. And I had been teaching Tai Chi for a little bit at that time. I said, okay, the concept of energy medicine came into my practice, and I started integrating it with my patients. And um, so we've got it to the point now where I don't prescribe narcotics anymore. We basically control their pain through other methods, and their recoveries are a lot faster. So that I think is, and I'm still learning in the process. I mean, you never stop learning. So that's uh, that's where I am. Um, yeah, I was going to actually throw out there, sort of current events, what does anybody think about Tylenol and pregnancy? So this is what I was saying. I was going to open up Pandora's box and see if anybody has any comments on that. Well, let me just start off.
Yeah, maybe let's, before we like go into those outer spheres, let's circle around with this idea of noetic energy, or noetic discipline, because it sounds as though there are different aspects of the discipline of learning medicine, and some of those were probably more noetic and some less noetic. So let's just look at that a little bit. What is a more noetic discipline? And that goes beyond medicine, right? It's a more general question. Yeah, Marianne.
I'm kind of experience is the word I want to bring forth. Um, the experience of the person who's coming with the health need is really brought into play when you start looking at noetic, as I see it, is that you can't, as a practitioner, come to a sense of knowing unless somehow you are connecting to the experience that the person is having, and especially as they move towards recovery. So as a Reiki practitioner on one side, we're experiencing the energy pathways that they're experiencing. On a neuromuscular therapy on another side, we're really palpating the fascia and the tissue and hearing and feeling and pulsing with them. So it's kind of like we turn on our CT scan and we turn on um, our mood control, where there's a happy face, a moderate face, and a sad face. And Reiki, you've got this whole spectrum, and you're going, and how is it that you're feeling right now? So in what ways has medicine kind of taken the lead from the more esoteric experience of the doctor to witness, exo meaning external, I guess is the word, that the patient is actually going? And how has your Tai Chi and your exploration in pain management helped to modify your practice and your experience that you have reported from your clients? That's fair.
Yeah, and that's very interesting, Marianne. Also in consideration with what Dr. Wang was mentioning about, you can learn all these symptoms, but something might be presenting itself to you if you're more intuitive, right? If you're picking up more of the subtleties of what's going on, and what does that involve? Maybe that has something to do with that knowing that you're referring to really knowing what's going on with them. What are those subtleties, and how do we pick up on those? To know.
Well, beyond structure, chemistry, um, physiology, I've actually, my Tai Chi has really given me a sense that if you go back far enough, and uh, we always start with a Wu Chi condition, which is the state of the universe before the Big Bang. And at that point, there was only energy and thought. So I'm actually just kind of giving you some Tai Chi philosophy here. The thought could be described as the mind of God or the mind of the Creator, who then made a decision to take all of this energy, which is very tightly compressed, and create this big bang. And from there, there was a split between yin and yang. Prior to that, that's the Wu Qi condition. There was no yin and yang. Once you had yin and yang, then out of there, you had the 10,000 polar opposites that quickly appeared, and their interaction created a very interesting universe. This is basically the reality or the universe that we live in today. Um, and so when current day, when I do a surgery on a patient, I go back to that Wu Qi concept and identify with this consciousness and uh, talk to the patients. Sometimes they're under anesthesia, but I talk to their cells, I talk to their tissues. My thought then, it's as if my energy field is fusing with theirs. And as I go in, I ask the cells to forgive me. We've got a job to do. I'm coming through. If I cut any of the blood vessels, please spasm down and stop bleeding. Um, and we work cooperatively to accomplish the surgery. In that process, I've also eliminated the need for electrocautery, which actually creates a subdermal burn or a tissue burn that the patient now has to recover from. The inflammation from that burn then is painful. So we've just about eliminated the electrocautery process in surgery. And it is interesting compared to my earlier career where we were doing standard surgery. They have less pain. Their recovery is a lot faster, and um, they tend to do better. So um, I'm using something that I don't think any of my surgical colleagues really understand. In fact, I barely understand it myself, but I'm using it based on the Tai Chi principles that I teach, and so this has helped me in my practice. It's helped my patients, and so uh, I continue to use it until something better shows up. I mean, there's always new things coming up. The most exciting thing that I'm doing is actually introducing pluripotential cells or stem cells into the tissues to bring in um, the cellular functions that are needed to heal whatever condition we're working on. So it is, I think, as Robert said, it's an art, uh, and more than just the science. And actually having the connection to the patient energetically, I think, has really, I think, made their experience better.
Beautiful. Comments and questions. And we don't have to be medical practitioners ourselves, I think, to enter this conversation.
I just want to follow up if I can. I'm in the middle of a big project here, but what I heard also with your response was a great bit of humility in the approach. And even at the beginning of your talk, as you were going through the different learning and teaching techniques, there's a humility to progress and experience and rework. So I was really fascinated. As you say, we don't get a chance to normally talk at this level with a medical practitioner or surgeon, somebody dealing with their heart, whatever it might be. And it was really fascinating. And I really appreciate that perspective and that answer.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, too.
I can also comment on that. I actually experienced something similar um, in the in the in the gap of knowledge that we have as far as explaining how acupuncture works from a TCM or traditional Chinese medicine medical terminology, and then trying to translate that into like a Western medicine technology or a scientific explanation. It doesn't really make sense, but well, not all the time anyway. Sometimes it can make sense. And I do a pretty good job at explaining it, but it still doesn't make complete sense. And there's in my experience, I also have to like put a leap of faith in that, like what I've learned and how I apply what I've learned will work, even though like I still don't really understand like 100% like how putting needles in somebody can like affect their like mood or their digestive organs, or sometimes like pain management when all the other Western doctors and all their fancy tools are unable to find what's going on with them.
Ishan or Jade?
Oh, thank you so much, Renee and Dr. Wong, for sharing. Dr. Wong, I really appreciated what you shared about how you talk to the cells and you how your energy field and the energy field of the patient connect and how you talk to the cells. And can you share more about that experience? And then also, do you also ask your patient to talk to their own cells in their own body? And just adding one more thing to that, I think this is very beautiful that you do that. And I know that in Qigong and Tai Chi and a lot of philosophies like Hawaiian philosophy, we believe that we can talk to nature, and nature is a part of us, and and um and that we, in a way, we can talk to our body. So it's just really amazing to hear you practice that. So thank you, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, thank you, Jade. One of the most disturbing things that I see in current allopathic medicine is that, based on scientific method, their concept is that is the best way to understand the reality that we live in. So, and that is sort of the basis for current clinical trials, all of this. But sadly, every 10 years, the dogma changes. It just seems to shift. I've gone back and forth on, estrogen supplements for females, the risks involved, and every 10 years, it's back and forth, back and forth. So it gives me a sense of, and the other thing is the American Cancer Society. After some 40 years or 50 years of their clinical trials, what I learned is that they really haven't changed the 5, 10, and 20-year survival rates on certain cancers. So I'm like, they're doing all this research, they're spending all this money, they're basically running all of these trials, and they still can't tell me, that they're effective. So it's a little bit disappointing from an MD point of view. So it kind of leads you to the point that, there must be something else. There must be a better way. And so I think we have to keep looking at what else is available there. So when I started practicing energy medicine in the sense of applying Tai Chi concepts, having discussions with my patients and their bodies, in Western medicine, this placebo effect is usually discounted as, oh, it's a side effect. It really doesn't really matter. It just gets in the way of the research and the findings. But from the Eastern side, that placebo effect is really valuable. In fact, there may be beneficial results coming from that. So sometimes I will actually encourage and show patients pictures of placebo effects that have beneficial outcomes. And so I'm actually implanting in their minds the possibility that these beneficial effects can come about. So it is, I believe, actually a worthwhile attempt to bring out the best results, employing not just placebo, but the patient's mindset, their extended energy. In other words, it's beyond, I think, the physical body. It includes their auric field and the connection that we all have to each other, to earth, to heaven, and basically all that comes into play. So that's sort of my personal approach in taking care of patients. Now, I think what has really, and again, I'm just kind of like opening it up a little bit. If you've been looking at this interstellar body that's approaching the sun, it's Three-Eye Atlas. And there was another one, it's considered Swan. It's coming in from a different part of the galaxy, approaching the sun at the same time. You know, I've just been following some of the reports from NASA. It really puts, you know, this concept of self out there and our place in the universe. I mean, each of us individually are really very, very small, very tiny, and the conflicts, the stresses, the sort of the daily worries that we all have are really put into perspective when you look at, you know, there could be a really big event coming, and it's supposedly passing Mars in a few days, and the Earth will actually orbit past their course probably mid to late October. And this Three-Eye Atlas apparently has broken into two pieces, and it's accompanied by several other comets or satellites that are going to be making a very close pass and possibly impacting Mars the next few days. So, I mean, if it starts throwing off the balance of our solar system, that, you know, and I'm not saying that, but there are these theories out there that are coming out of, you know, the astrophysicists from Harvard and some well-known names. They're concerned. NASA's concerned, and anyway, it really puts into perspective, you know, how small we are and what a small part we play in the workings of the galactic universe. So anyway, this is the Pandora's box I was also alluding to, that it's a lot of unknowns. I think the main advice that I would have is follow it with interest. Don't spend a lot of energy worrying about what could happen unless something does happen. But I do think that beyond, you know, mind and body, there is a spiritual lesson here coming up in the next few weeks. So I'll stop, you know, putting out conspiracy theories and all this other stuff. So just let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. We'll open it up. We've got, you know, about 15 minutes to go. So
You know, there's that expression, nothing's as important as we think it is. And
Yes.
everything is so much more important than we think it is. And from an energy perspective, and if you want to talk about, you know, influence on a deeper plane, I think it's impossible to know and potentially possible to greatly underestimate the power of our thought, our love, our influence on the galactic universe. And that actually we are extremely important. As tiny as we may be in body, our influence may actually be vast. And for that reason, nothing that we do here is unimportant. When we gather here as a collective and we are really thinking on behalf of the larger whole and really seeing from the perspective of what can we do to be a benefit to humanity, to the earth, and to the universe, that makes a difference. And I don't think we want to minimize it. It is important to consider. And like you say, we can't obsess over it. That's not going to help anybody. But certainly keeping this idea of the brightness of our thoughts and of our love makes a huge difference to those around us, and that has a ripple effect outward. It does affect all of nature and probably beyond into, you know, wider spheres than we can imagine. Robert?
Well, just this discussion, nous, you know, can be translated as mind. And, but like he said, it's actually mind knowing, not mind speculating. But in Hindu Buddhist philosophy, and certainly in ancient Greek philosophy, our minds were completely connected with universal mind, cosmic mind. Uh, so I'm bringing this up because the statements you're making, Dr. Wan, makes me think that you're thinking in terms of all these kinds of connections we have in terms of consciousness that we can make connections with and can have a significant effect upon the objective world. Is that true?
I agree with that statement. Yes. There, it actually goes along with the concept of Ho'oponopono that Dr. Hugh Len was promoting during his tenure at the Hawaii State Hospital, where he was using a four-part process looking at the inmate records there. Again, based off of this concept of connection with everything. You know, his first statement was, I accept responsibility for this person's actions, even though they were doing, you know, heinous crimes, murder, rape, assault, drug use, and you know, they were there because they had been diagnosed with significant mental illness of some sort. So again, his first statement was, I accept responsibility for their actions because part of me is connected to this behavior, to this uh, disorder. And so the second statement was, I apologize. I other than, you know, I accept responsibility. I'm sorry And then he moves on to thank you for allowing me to recognize this connection. And then the fourth statement was, I express love for this person, and in doing so, his record for his tenure there, they actually had decreased violence on the wards. They had decreased call outs for sick leave from the staff. They even started having passes for the inmates to visit their family on weekends. Um, the whole environment of the Hawaii State Hospital changed during his tenure there. So, and he wasn't, really interfacing with the inmates so much as praying over them in reviewing their records. So it gives me a sense that yes, there is something to our connection with the universe, with each other, that uh, has beneficial effects when we consider and embracing that connection.
Bob Buss.
Yeah, what you just said reminded me of a statement from Taoism, the Chuang-Tzu, and the emperor called together many craftsmen who were considered masters and said, "Can you tell me the secret of your mastery?" And then I can apply it to my role as a leader. And a master carver, wood carver, said, "No, that's impossible. I can tell you how to use the various instruments. I can give you information that will put you on the path of becoming a wood carver. But then at one point, it becomes," and he didn't use the word mystical, but I would say it became experiential on a level that could not be communicated anymore. And he gave the analogy of, at some point, I feel at one with the wood and the knife, and the form comes out, not my design of it, but it comes out of the wood. And he said, similarly, when I have the idea of creating a particular thing, maybe a bowl or a calabash or whatever, I go into the woods and wait for a tree to reveal itself as the source of that carving. In other words, he's waiting for information, and he says there's no way you can teach that. It's not a way of looking with your eyes. It's a way of, and I think what you were talking about, being interconnected, and at some point that becomes what you first mentioned as mastery. And it seems to me that that's kind of interesting as an area of what that connectivity actually means when you are mastering a particular kind of skill.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, yeah, that was, I think, well said. It was a very keen observation. A lot of times our desires are thrust upon an object or thrust upon a situation. And whether, that, I mean, I think that has less significance than the allowing of the form to show itself. In a sense, there's a process of surrender that then allows the result to manifest rather than our desire to have it come out a certain way. Yeah, well said, Bob.
So, applying it within your field, Dr. Wong, I'm hearing something like rather than you imposing a solution, a healing, end result. You're working together with the energy field of this being. You become one with it in such a way that the optimal result can reveal itself, can unfold itself uh, with the assistance of your skills and your knowledge. Yeah?
Yes.
Mhm.
I think, I mean, currently, as a plastic surgeon, uh, I have to understand there is beauty in each individual, and where their concept of uh, imbalance, they're asking me to restore better balance, to bring out their beauty. Um, i- my role is really to encourage the beauty to come forth. And a lot of times it's just creating a confidence in their image, their self-image, that then, the balance shows up, the beauty is exposed.
Mhm. Lovely. One of the things I'm noticing about all of the approaches that each of you has mentioned so far in terms of discipline is that it isn't just something like, okay, I've done the discipline and now I've arrived. No, this noetic discipline is one, it seems like, that's always progressing, that's always seeing beyond itself. And uh, it does involve that humility that someone complimented you on having, Randy, that we're not there yet. We haven't gone as far as we could go. There's so much more. And and also I think that um, opens things up for learning from one another as well, doesn't it? I mean, that's part of the reason I think that we're here together, is that each of us feel as if there's something that my interaction with all of you is going to, be enhanced by, right? That we can learn from one another's mistakes sometimes when we're in communication with others, as well as their progress and their insights. Um, so it's kind of cumulative. It's this forward progress that's on the behalf of the whole and that includes the whole. It's not you just progressing on your own, but especially by sharing with us what you have been delving into, it allows us to wonder, wow, how could that apply to whatever it is that I do? How could I be working on more subtle levels to find more effective ways of connecting with whoever it is, whatever it is I'm working with, in order to be more effective? And for these results to reveal themselves more than me just imposing uh, my idea of what they should be upon them. That seems to be quite a lovely approach to this idea of becoming a true master that Einstein was referring to in our quote for this week. I'm going to mention to everybody at this point what we're going to do for next week. And then I'll circle back around and see if there's somebody who would like to give Dr. Wong a vote of thanks for his wonderful presentations and just unfolding thoughts along the course of this conversation. Just marvelous. Next week is going to be the uh, the week of trusteeship, and it takes into account, I think, the fact that on October 2nd, so just a couple days before, will be the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, who had a very strong idea of trusteeship as opposed to possession. So we have somebody from a Gandhian nonprofit who has spoken with us in the past. Um, his name is Prakash Tyagi, and he's going to be our presenter for next week, so we can really look forward to that. Is there someone who would like to give a vote of thanks for Dr. Wong? Because I know I want to. Okay, hold on one sec. I have to, maybe I better let somebody else because I'm going to have to silence my phone. There we go. All right. Well, I would like to thank you, Randy, for really taking us deeper and deeper and deeper into your journey. And, you know, starting at the place of somebody just entering into medical school, and now someone who is deep, deep, deep into his profession and going places that few people seem to be going right now in the Western medical world. And it's so inspiring and shows to me that kind of luminosity of mind that typifies noesis. So certainly a noetic discipline that you have shared with us. Thank you so very much. Thank you, everybody. Aloha.
Aloha. Yeah, really
Aloha,
life
thank you.
changing. Thank you.